let's talk about money for a little bit. So each of you have been successful or are about to be successful in fundraising. Tell me a little bit about how you found your investor or investors. How did those relationships come about? How challenging was the process of raising the money? Did you feel like it went smoothly or is going smoothly? Any lessons learned from the audience? Like, how do you go out? These are very hard to do without money.
Well, CTV had a major role in that. We got introduced to investors. We, in the beginning, now kind of the word is out, and we are being contacted by multiple, which is, you always know that it is important to have a perspective and know exactly your market value, but it's, we definitely are seeing this now.
There's this is basic economics, but the math changes substantially in terms of the value if you're negotiating with one party versus negotiating with two people. So nothing brings clarity like competition. It's a great situation. You guys have had many, your dance card is very full right now, so that's very exciting. How about you?
So I participated in we participated in the Coulter, and there was a company, an investors group that is interested in being with young, hopeful companies and developing them further along. The monies that go in there are high, and for people who have previously only worked in science and on grant-related budgets, it's very out of my league, because a lot of money goes also to lawyers, to stuff you never imagine, and you're really not an expert in. And CTV again comes in very handy as a guidance for this. In the end, you have to go out and raise money yourself, or for that company, of course. And I must say, if you have a good product and you have the data to show, that is not so difficult. But to get somebody else's money is always difficult enough. Yeah.
So we call this person, this mythical person, the unicorn. So the unicorn for us has been the person that kind of joins the team early and is the catalyst person between what we do and helping us either get introductions to that money or making, facilitating in some way. So our first deal, Skinetics found its unicorn because we did such a bad job at one of our VC pitches that we were out in the hallway sort of crying, and it was a disaster. And one of the partners that we presented to came out and said, "You guys were horrible, but I love the idea, so I'm going to help you anyway." Which was like
okay, so the lesson is be really bad in your first pitch, and then.
And it changed everything. He did, and he was our unicorn. It's kind of like Shark Tank, only worse. The second time, though, we were very helped by our field, and I don't know if this pertains to you guys as well, but within dermatology, there's a catalyst called Advancing Innovation in Dermatology, and it's a group of sort of derm entrepreneurs that organize themselves into this wonderful catalyst. And that's exactly what they do, is they help people who have early stage technologies be introduced to either the community or company partners or people that can give them drugs or chemists or whatever, free of charge. They're just amazing ex-pharma folks, in some cases current pharma folks. So they helped a lot with Vixen, and now for Rapunzel, it's a whole different question now because our needs are different. We're talking about stem cells and GMP, and this is a brand of unicorn that we haven't really tapped into yet. And so in our experience, one of the key ingredients in the early stages has been a business savvy, friendly person that can kind of come in and help open the doors and understands the science and values the science enough and is themselves not greedy and willing to work basically on spec as part of creating something of greater value.
And for those entrepreneurs in the audience, there are a number of resources around Columbia where you can tap into that entrepreneur network. I know the business school has a great entrepreneur in residence program. Our office at CTV has executives in residence, 5 or 6 per semester, who are under non-disclosure agreements, so you can talk to them freely, and they are free. They don't take any equity or cash. And they're there to bounce ideas off of. All of them are serial entrepreneurs or funders or industry veterans. And we're actually launching a program shortly across all the academic medical centers of New York City called the New York Life Science Venture Exchange, which the goal of which is to connect those unicorns with high promise startups based in New York in the life sciences. We've got a similar model going for clean energy that's getting up to a good start. So there's a lot of,
I know,
please. No, it's okay.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that's changed too in the past 10 years is that there's so many more pots of local money. So there's $100,000 grants basically every time you turn around. In our case, we went to STTR and SBIR, but you don't have to go that far. There's so many, or you know them better, but local, development funds now that didn't exist before that are easy to at least find out about and then to compete for.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with this. At the medical center, there's a preventive precision medicine initiatives, and so just participating is great networking. If you get a grant, it's not a lot of money, but it is very good to give you recognition and to connect you to people who value that you've achieved a grant, on that topic. So that's very helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
How many folks in the room, when Angela mentioned SBIRs and STTRs, just show of hands, how many people know what those mean? Okay, less than a third. So can we just do 2 minutes on SBIRs? Because it's free money from the government.
Money.
It's please go ahead.
So I guess, I don't know how long ago, 20 years ago now, the NIH was mandated by Congress to put aside 1% of its annual budget for business development to translate many of the technologies that were discovered under NIH grants and try to reinvest that into the community. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research, right? Yep. STTR is, Similar but different. Right? The main difference is in STTR, the grant holder can be at the university. The SBIR, the grant holder has to be in the business side. So there can be subcontracts in either direction. The STTRs are much harder to get. There's a smaller pot of money, and they're much more competitive because you're competing against your own colleagues. The SBIRs are actually much easier to get because there's a lot of people, at least in the hair loss world, trying to do really bad research. So that helps us. We look better against the backdrop of not so great science. So these programs are out there. They're 1 year for $100,000, and then you can convert to second year and third year for $750,000. And then if you're really lucky in your area, sometimes they launch over $1 million. So you do need a few things to get started, though. You have to be formed, so the business has to exist. It usually needs to have a space, and this is where the Audubon Building, Harlem Biospace, a lot of the other incubators come into play. But the good thing is you can use the grant to pay your rent. So the grant is pretty liberal in terms of what it can cover for the business: legal costs, accounting, rent, overhead, et cetera. So these are programs, again, through the NIH. They're a little bit more cumbersome, but I will say very prestigious. So when you're out talking to investors and you have an SBIR grant, it's a mark of excellence. Yeah. So they're worth the trouble.
And actually other agencies, the NIH has it, but actually every federal granting agency is required to put aside a certain percentage of their budget for these. So the NSF has them, DARPA, ARPA-E. In fact, we have one of Columbia's startups, Lumiode, which is an NSF-funded startup that got an SBIR grant from them as well, is now just raised their big A round, and they are based in the Mink building just down the hill in Harlem. So actually, maybe let's touch on that for a moment. When you think about, I mean, as a lifelong New Yorker, it's been amazing to see the changes that have happened in terms of the entrepreneurship scene in town. For many years now, startups that really are a couple of people on a laptop have had many options. WeWork has kind of transformed that industry. For companies where you need more than just a laptop, where do you go? And do you think the next company you start will be here in New York City?
So I currently go to California, which is the way it is. But the next company will be at Harlem Biospace.
So my first one was at Audubon. Skinetics was at Audubon. The second one left before it got housed. And the third one, Rapunzel's actually at Harlem Biospace. But we have so many options now. There's the NYU Incubator, there's Alexandria, there's so much more. So if your needs are simple, cell culture and a centrifuge, you can actually find that now. And again, Harlem Biospace, a shout out to Sam Sia and the colleagues here for getting that off the ground. So we should take pride, I think, in that too. So there's a lot more available now. And each of those little incubators has their own receptions and networking and events that you can avail yourself of, all for free. So you can crash a lot of parties and meet a lot of people without having to be a tenant. I shouldn't say that.
Well done.